on, so I'm going to go ahead and get us started. So welcome to today's news conference, looking at TRIP's new report on the Oklahoma transportation system. Our report is based on the latest data from a variety of sources, including at the U.S. Department of Transportation, as well as the Oklahoma Department of Transportation. After I give my comments, we're going to hear from Brent Starkey, who's the Senior Vice President of the State Chamber of Commerce. And then we'll hear from Bobby Stem, the Executive Director of the Associated General Contractors of Oklahoma. When we're done our comments, we'll take questions from the media, and you just can through the chat or raise hand function, you can indicate you have a question, and at that point you'll be elevated to the media so that we can go ahead and take your questions. Let me turn to the key findings of the report. We have seen continued increase in funding of Oklahoma's transportation system. Certainly we've seen the results, particularly with improved bridge conditions across the state, but unfortunately the significant level of inflation in highway construction costs, which essentially are labor and material, have really dampened the ability of that additional funding to keep up with the needs in Oklahoma. In fact, since 2021, we've seen a 68% increase in inflation in the cost of highway construction. The report took a look at what's the impact on the public of roads that oftentimes are in poor condition, which increases operating costs because vehicles are operating a lot more stress. They need additional repairs, and unfortunately, vehicles don't last as long when roads are in rough condition. We've also looked at the impact of traffic congestion, which results in additional delays, more time spent out on the road, and also additional gasoline use. And then finally, we look at the economic cost of serious and fatal traffic crashes. TRIP report estimates that the average cost to a motorist in the Oklahoma City area of roads that are deteriorated, congested, and sometimes lacking adequate roadway safety features is $2,571 annually. The TRIP report estimates that the average cost to motorists in the Tulsa area of roads and highways that are often deteriorated, congested, and lacking in some desirable safety features is $2,486 annually. The TRIP report also took a look at the condition of the state's major roads and highways in terms of pavement conditions. These are roadways maintained by local and also by state government. And the report found that 48% of these roadways are rated in either poor or mediocre condition. The TRIP report found that in the Oklahoma City, that 32% of major roadways have pavements in poor condition, and another 21% are rated in mediocre condition. The TRIP report found that in the Tulsa area, 37% of major roadways have pavements rated in poor condition, and another 24% are rated in mediocre condition. The TRIP report also took a look at the condition of Oklahoma's bridges. 15 years ago, the state had one of the highest rates of deficient bridges. Through a significant increase in investment and the hard work of the state's transportation department and local governments, in Oklahoma, the number or the share of deficient bridges has dropped to 8%. In fact, among state-maintained bridges, only 1% are rated in poor condition. So that's a testament to what can happen if adequate resources are made available. The report does note that in the Oklahoma City area, 5% of the region's bridges are rated in poor condition and in need of repair, and another 53% are rated in fair condition and in need of ongoing maintenance to ensure they don't fall into poor condition. The report found that in the Tulsa area, 12% of the region's bridges are rated in poor condition and in need of repair, and 44% are rated in fair condition and in need of ongoing maintenance to ensure they don't fall into poor condition. The TRIP report also looked at traffic congestion in the state, particularly in Oklahoma City and Tulsa areas, and note that during the COVID-19 pandemic, clearly we saw a significant drop in vehicle travel in Oklahoma and across the country. And then we've seen the rebound. By 2024, vehicle travel in Oklahoma was actually 2% higher than 2019. Certainly a good sign. It shows economic growth, that the state is back in terms of economics and quality of life, but it also means additional wear and tear on the state's transportation system, and traffic congestion, which in reality was relieved by the pandemic, is back. Sometimes somewhat different. We're seeing evening rush hours across the country back to pre-pandemic levels, but the patterns are a little different in the morning. We see more midday traffic congestion, and oftentimes Saturdays are as congested as weekdays. In the Oklahoma City area, TRIP estimates that the average motorist is spending an additional 54 hours annually stuck in traffic due to traffic congestion and wasting 22 gallons of fuel annually. In the Tulsa area, the TRIP report finds that the average motorist is spending an additional 42 hours annually stuck in traffic due to traffic congestion and wasting 15 gallons of fuel. The TRIP report also looked at traffic safety, absolutely the ultimate measure of a state's transportation system, and absolutely critical that we move to a point where no one is being killed on our roadways. Unfortunately, that's not the case now. The report found that from 2019 to 2023, there were 3,462 traffic fatalities in Oklahoma, and it was occurring at the rate of the 9th highest across the country when measured in comparison to the level of travel. We also point out in the report that over the last 5 years, that 15% of these fatalities have been of pedestrian and bicyclists. So clearly moving forward, we have to have a transportation system that's keeping all travelers, whether they're motorists, pedestrian, or bicyclists, safe. The report notes that from 2018 to 2022, there were an average of 131 traffic fatalities in the Oklahoma City area. The TRIP report found that from 2018 to 2022, there was an average of 102 traffic fatalities in the Tulsa area. In 2022, the U.S. Department of Transportation put out a comprehensive report on solutions to traffic fatalities and improving traffic safety, with the ultimate goal of getting to zero traffic fatalities across the country. It pointed out that certainly it starts with the driver. The drivers have to be driving at safe speeds. They should be focused on driving safely, and certainly it should not be impaired. But it also pointed out the critical importance of making sure our transportation infrastructure is as safe as possible. And so work that improves safety, everything from adding rumble strips to paving shoulders to adding turn lanes where they're needed to adding lighting, particularly in urban areas, and also improving facilities for non-motorists. All of these are critical in terms of improving safety, but it obviously requires having the resources available at the state and local level to proceed with these projects. Finally, I'll note that $295 billion worth of goods are being moved in and out of Oklahoma on an annual basis, the majority of it on trucks. And it's estimated that based on value and adjusted for inflation, the value of goods being moved in and out of Oklahoma by trucks by 2050 will increase by 90%, nearly doubling. Again, that's a sign of Oklahoma's economic health, but also a reminder of how vital our transportation system is, not only to the quality of life of Oklahomans, but certainly to the state's economy. So with that, I think it's a perfect time to turn it over to Brent. Brent, thank you for taking time out of your day to talk to us.
Well, I appreciate it, Rocky. Yeah, as far as the state chamber is concerned, when it comes to infrastructure is key for our state to continue to grow and to recruit more companies to come to the state. Obviously, businesses need to be able to do business, and in Oklahoma, that depends a lot on the infrastructure. You mentioned it off the top. We made a significant investment specifically in our bridges over the last 10 years, and that has led us to really climb in the rankings when we rank our infrastructure based to other states around the country. Right now, we are 7th in overall transportation infrastructure, which is pretty good. We were well down from that before our bridges were improved. However, we have been falling the last couple years because not keeping up with some of the key infrastructure that's important. We want to make sure that we have the plan to think ahead. Oklahoma's great. You talk to a lot of people, our lack of traffic compared to other states, especially our main metropolitan areas compared to other big metropolitan areas. But it's also key that we continue to plan for that and make sure that we have the infrastructure plan in place to grow so we can keep that relatively low traffic volume intact. It's a recruiting tool for companies. It's a recruiting tool for employees as well.
Thank you, Brent. And now we're going to call on Bobby to provide some comments on the findings of the trip report.
Sure. Thank you so much, Rocky. It's bittersweet. We definitely celebrate the advances in our bridge conditions. When the Roads Fund was established 20 years ago, we could have never dreamed that we would climb the ranks over the last 2 decades, like we have from 49th to now definitely in the top 10. And quite honestly, I hate to be so blunt about it, but it takes money. Money is what builds roads and bridges. And so we really appreciate highlighting that, Rocky. We think that this is the right time for the right message. And we're very concerned, however. If you've been following the Capitol, you know that right now there's a move for a half and a path. That's 0.5% income tax reduction right now, and a path to zero. Well, that half means for a family that brings home $80,000 a year, that 0.5% only saves them $180. And from what you've told me, Rocky, that same family is going to spend over $2,000 repairing their vehicles because of the condition of our roads and bridges. So instead of a half and a path, I think what we're going to get is half of a path. Half of a path is what we're going to get. We're going to have Rule 2-lane roads that remain shoulderless. We're going to have the congestion in the areas because we can't tackle the big interchanges. And we're going to begin slipping behind if we cut our income tax. I think we've got to have tax reform, but not tax cuts at this point in time. So I love the report. I'm a little fearful of the direction that our state is taking right now, though.
Thank you, Bobby. I'm going to now ask Carolyn to go ahead and explain how we're going to handle questions that the media may have on the report.
Thanks, Rocky, and thanks, Bobby and Brent, for joining us this morning. I'm Carolyn Kelly. I'm the Director of Communications and Research for TRIP. So as Rocky mentioned, we'll be able to do a brief Q&A with Rocky and our other panelists this morning. The way that will work is if there are questions from the media, you can use either the raise hand function or the chat function that you see below on Zoom. I'll then be able to elevate you to a panelist, and you will be able to see and hear you, and you can ask your questions and any follow-ups live of our participants. So while I wait for some questions to come in or for some virtual hands to be raised, I'll also note that the full report that we released this morning is now available on the TRIP website. You can find that at tripnet, tripnet.org. We've also got separate news releases that have breakdowns for the Tulsa and Oklahoma City areas. And we'll also have a recording of this news conference up on the website, probably by around 11 o'clock this morning. It'll just take us a bit of time to get that processed and set up. So Rocky, at this time, I don't see any hands up, but if there's anything that you'd like to add, or Bobby or Brent, you can go ahead.
Well, I was going to mention that we'd asked the Oklahoma Department of Transportation to view our news conference. They were also very helpful in providing additional information for the report. So I'm not sure if they would like to just provide contact information if any of the media would like to reach out to them for comment. So I have a question for Brent, and if anyone from the department wants to raise a hand if they do want an opportunity to just provide contact information. And it looks like Bryce does. Let me I have a question for Brent, and then perhaps we could elevate Bryce and he could provide that. Okay, well there he is. So go ahead, Bryce, and just let the media know how they can reach out, or if you have a comment you want to give at this point, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, we appreciate being included in the webinar here. If you guys do have any questions for ODOT on the findings of the report, you can send those directly to me at bryce.boyer@odot.ok.gov.
Excellent. Good. Thank you. Thanks for giving us that information. Brent, I was just curious, obviously the state chamber is very much tied in with the state's economic development. And I'm wondering from your perspective, as the state has been investing and upgrading its infrastructure and the need to continue to do that, how that fits in with the chamber's efforts to continue to improve the state's economy.
Well, they're definitely entwined. When companies are looking to expand in Oklahoma, when companies are looking to move to Oklahoma, infrastructure is one of the central things they look at. Obviously, it's not just roads and bridges, it's internet infrastructure, it's energy grid infrastructure. Those are all important, but roads definitely play a big part of it. You mentioned the increase in truck traffic that's expected. When you look at Oklahoma, we have taken advantage of being at the middle of everything, and we have a larger trucking industry than a lot of other states. And it's important to keep our roads and bridges in tip-top shape because we have that here, and we are going to be able to grow that here. During the pandemic, we passed legislation that would speed up the process, which of qualified people to get their trucking license, cuts out some of the red tape and the wait that they had to go through because it's in such high demand here in Oklahoma, but across the country as well. So making that investment in Oklahoma's roads and bridges, obviously will help to attract new businesses to come here, but it will also strengthen the ones that are already here.
Great. No, thanks, Brent. With that,
Rocky, we've got
coming in. Great.
One question from KOKI. If you unmute your line, you'll be able to ask your question. Go right ahead.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Devin Line with Fox 23 in Tulsa. I was just asking, what is the primary reason behind road conditions for this research? Is it trucking? Is it a lack of focus towards improvement on the state? Any of y'all are allowed to answer that.
Certainly large trucks, which are absolutely vital to the state's economy, are also the vehicles by their size that also put the most stress on roads, highways, and bridges. And so certainly it's possible to maintain infrastructure in good condition, notwithstanding the growth in trucking across the state. But certainly that takes resources, and obviously trucks are going to be driving on roads and bridges maintained by the state, but also by local governments. So that those needs go beyond strictly state government. In terms of sort of the physics of roads, and I don't pretend to be an engineer, but at the end of the day, they deteriorate based on use, but also certainly by weather. The ability of states to adequate, and also local transportation agencies, to do ongoing preservation greatly extends their lifespan. And unfortunately, when that doesn't happen, then you're sort of chasing your pavement conditions by fixing problems as they're cropping up. And that's, as with any preservation, it's true of bridges, is not really ideal, and it's not cost effective. And also, we have an aging interstate system, but really all of our roads and bridges are quite old. And as you would anticipate, there's a point of diminishing returns. And so more simple repairs to pavements and also bridges don't last as long as they once did as substructures begin to deteriorate. And so that's the challenge for transportation agencies, is trying to stay ahead of these challenges. Certainly inflation has made that more difficult. And that's why it's critical to essentially keep your foot on the pedal in terms of funding those improvements, because when you fall behind, it's hard to catch up. And we give plaudits to the Oklahoma Department of Transportation. They did catch up with bridges, but it certainly wasn't easy, and it took investment to get there.
If I could, let me piggyback on that. So the last 20 years, the focus has been on bridges. So 20 years ago, we had a lady die because of a chunk of concrete came through her windshield and killed her. And Oklahoma was embarrassed, and we said, we've got to fix our bridges. So in that 20 years, the roads fund was created, and 590 million a year is what that number is now. But that went to bridges. And so when we look now, as we shift away from the bridge focus, think of a map of Oklahoma, and every bridge would be this little red dot. So really what we have is great bridges, but every highway connecting those bridges is in poor shape because of our ride index and our pavement conditions, et cetera. So, and that's not even counting our shoulderless 2-lane roads. So we just have to shift from that to the actual now taking care of our actual interstates. And we're doing so at about 50% higher inflation. And so that's been a challenge as well. It's about money.
And so I guess to follow up on that question, is that a better solution towards that is almost a reprioritization, what we did with bridges 20 years ago, now with roads and highways.
That's right. And I think our friends at ODOT will second this, and that is we begin to shift from the bridge priority to our road priority and our actual pavement conditions themselves. You've seen, if you look at the 8-year plan, which used to be dominated with bridge jobs, the 8-year plan now is shifting. We still have to address the bridges that come into danger annually, but we're now shifting to dealing with pavement conditions, making the pavements better, sometimes wider, sometimes even more lanes with that. Yes, sir.
And so this is probably, I think, my last question, but I appreciate you guys' time so much. Thank you. After all this data, can we chalk up a solution somehow? What would be the best outcome moving forward? Because I know, although we are exhausted of bad road conditions, I smacked the hell out of a pothole this morning on my way into work, but we're also exhausted of the cones everywhere and taxes. So is this more of like an appropriation solution at the Capitol? What can we see going forward?
It absolutely is. It's unlike education, public safety, and health. There's 4 core functions of government. Infrastructure is one of those. Unlike those other 3, this problem gets solved with money. 100%. Money's what buys asphalt, concrete, rebar, and pays people to put those things on the ground. So I think it's just highly reckless for us to even be discussing tax cuts at this time. And then when we look at what it does for the average Oklahoman, I'd really rather help them avoid shocks and strut repair, or like in your case, almost a flat tire with that pothole. Let's avoid those $2,000 a year worth of repairs. Keep your $180 a year tax cut, Governor Stitt. Help me keep my car out of potholes. And help me travel in rural Oklahoma safely every Sunday on the way to go see grandmother without the fear of dying on a shoulderless 2-lane road. So let's shift off of tax cuts. Let's say, what do we want Oklahoma to look like? And we go build that.
Thank you very much. That's all the questions I have in the meantime, but I might think of more in a minute.
Awesome.
Sure.
Thank you, man.
And as far as that goes, at least certainly, myself and Carolyn at Trip will be available throughout the day for journalists who reach out to us who might want to do individual one-on-one interviews. And as you heard from the department, from Bryce, that's also true. And of course, Brent and Bobby can be reached at their organizations. So I think for now, we'll conclude our formal news conference and encourage you to reach out if you have further questions, and thank our panelists and also the department for taking time out of their day to participate, and hope everybody has a safe day. And again, thank you.
Hey, guys.